They say the lake breathes. They say it remembers. And on moonlit nights, it listens to a man who plays a song not meant for the living. He is known as the Jazzman of Lake Victoria region, a gifted saxophonist cursed to play each night on the shore of ancient Tanzania. Not for joy, not for love, but to keep an ancient spirit from dragging him back into the deep. Years ago, he drowned, and from the shadows of the water, she rose, Mami Wata, goddess of beauty, desire, and ruin. She saved him. She took his voice and bound him to her forever. Now, his music is his voice, his plea, his prison. Each note he plays is a warning, because if the melody stops, the lake will rise, the goddess will awaken, and all who listen will drown in her longing. This is no folk tale. It is a story carved in water, desire, and silence. A tale of love so fierce it devours, a curse so deep it sings through the bones of the lake. This is the haunting legend of the Jazzman of Lake Victoria region in ancient Tanzania. And tonight, the water is listening. So, sit back, because this is Africa Unveiled. Before we dive in, I know many of you are watching from around the world, united by a love for Africa. Drop a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from. I'll be in the comments engaging with you. And if you're enjoying the content, a like and subscription would truly mean the world to me. Alright, let's get back to the video. The night air along the shores of Lake Victoria was thick with the scent of earth and water, cool and damp, as the full moon bathed the landscape in a silver glow. The waves of the lake lapped gently at the shoreline, but beneath their rhythmic movements, there was something more, an undercurrent of restlessness. The lake, like a living entity, seemed to hold its breath. Kazi stood at the water's edge, his saxophone pressed gently to his lips. His eyes were heavy with the weight of years spent trapped in a world between the living and the dead. Every night, he came to this very spot, playing his sorrow into the world, his melodies floating across the water, weaving through the mist that rose from the lake's surface. His music was beautiful, a haunting, mournful sound that spoke of loss, love, and longing. It was a sound that seemed to echo the very essence of the lake itself, and it was the only thing keeping him tethered to this world, for Kazi had lost much more than just his voice. Years ago, in a tragic twist of fate, Kazi had drowned in these same waters. A freak accident. He had been caught in a violent storm, a sudden downpour that swelled the lake's waters and pulled him under. The lake had claimed him, pulling him down into its depths, suffocating him in its cold embrace. But that wasn't the end. In the depths of the lake, Kazi encountered a woman with silver eyes, Mami Wata, the spirit of the water. She was a vision of beauty, her body draped in shimmering scales that caught the light like moonbeams on the water's surface. She had the power to grant life, but at a price. "You are lost," Mami Wata had said, her voice like the ripples on the water. "I will return you to the living, but in exchange, you must give me your voice. It will be mine, and you will play only for me." Kazi, desperate to live, agreed without fully understanding the consequences. Mami Wata's magic surged through him, reviving him, returning him to the surface of the lake, gasping for air. But his voice was gone, taken by her, as promised. Now every night, Kazi wandered the shores of Lake Victoria, his saxophone his only connection to the world. It was his way of keeping Mami Wata at bay. Each note he played was a desperate cry, an attempt to break free from her grasp. The saxophone's deep, soulful melodies flowed from him, like the waters of the lake, smooth at first, but always tinged with the pain of his silent curse. But Mami Wata's presence was always there, just beneath the surface, watching, waiting. She lingered in the depths, her silver eyes gleaming from the murky waters. He could feel her there, always a step away, her energy thrumming through the very air he breathed. The lake's waves seemed to respond to her power, shifting in time with the melodies Kazi played, as though it too was under her control. Every night Kazi played, his fingers caressing the keys of his saxophone in a delicate, mournful dance. He no longer played for the world, for the love of music. He played for his survival, for his very soul. And though his music filled the air with sadness and longing, it was also his only hope, his last fragile tether to freedom. The lake whispered its secrets to him in the quiet of the night. It spoke of things that no mortal could comprehend, the spirits that resided beneath its surface, the souls it had claimed, the memories of those who had been lost to its depths. But Kazi's music could not silence the lake's ancient power. It could not release him from his pact with Mami Wata. He had been reborn in her image, bound to the waters forever. The only way out, he knew, would be to confront the spirit who had claimed his life and his voice. But the lake, the spirit, and the music, they were all tied together, inseparable. As long as the lake's waters continued to churn and the moon continued to rise, Kazi would play, and he would never be free. The waves of Lake Victoria rippled in response to his song, as if acknowledging his eternal bond with them. It was a song of yearning, of loss, of a man caught in the swirling depths between life and death. And so, Kazi played, his saxophone, a bridge between two worlds, one that belonged to the living, and one that belonged to the spirits of the lake. The moon hung low over Lake Victoria, casting its silver glow across the water. The landscape was tranquil, but within Kazi, a storm was brewing. Each night, the saxophone's mournful melody echoed over the still lake, but the music was no longer just an expression of sorrow. It had become a ritual, a desperate plea for release from the chains of silence. Kazi's life had become a hollow existence, filled only with the sound of his saxophone and the endless night. His days were spent in quiet isolation, his nights in the company of Mami Wata, though she remained hidden beneath the lake's surface. The silence that followed the notes he played was deafening, a constant reminder that he had lost more than just his voice. He had lost the very essence of who he was. Though he could not speak, the music he played told stories, stories of love, of pain, of dreams long forgotten. It was as though each note held a memory of his past life, of a time when he could laugh, could love, could speak. But Mami Wata had taken it all. Now all he had was his saxophone and the lake, whose waters seemed to reflect his own emptiness. The once calming sound of the waves now seemed to mock him, rolling in quiet rhythm to the beat of his sorrow. Kazi could feel her presence, even when she didn't show herself. Mami Wata was always there, her spirit entwined with the very fabric of the lake. He had never fully understood her or the nature of their bond, but he could sense her jealousy. When he played too well, when his music became too beautiful, the waters grew restless. The once calm lake would churn and writhe as if in a fit of anger, and Kazi would play louder, harder, to calm it down. In the silence that followed the storm, the lake would settle once more, but the unease would remain. Mami Wata was never truly gone. Her silver eyes were always watching. Yet, amidst the oppressive silence, Kazi sometimes dreamt of his old life. He dreamed of the laughter of his family, the joy of his music before the curse had taken everything from him. In his dreams, he could speak, his voice a beautiful extension of the saxophone's song. His memories of love, of faces, of warmth, of words spoken in the light of day, were fleeting, like wisps of smoke that vanished the moment he tried to grasp them. But as quickly as the memories arrived, they would fade, leaving only the music to fill the empty space. His saxophone was the only connection to those long-lost emotions, to a time when he had been whole. He played in the darkness, sometimes forgetting the world around him, lost in the melodies that seemed to come from somewhere deep within, from a place untouched by the curse, and for a fleeting moment, he would feel alive again. But then the silence would come. It was in these moments of solitude, when the world seemed to hold its breath, that Kazi would feel the pressure of Mami Wata's presence. She would linger in the air, like a thick fog, and Kazi would sense her longing. He would play for her, hoping to appease the spirits of the lake, to keep them at bay. But no matter how hard he played, no matter how perfect the notes, it was never enough. She wanted more than music, more than sound. She wanted him, all of him. One night, as the first rays of dawn began to paint the sky in shades of violet and orange, Kazi's playing faltered. The melody, usually so smooth and haunting, broke, a jagged edge cutting through the tranquil morning air. The lake, as if sensing his distress, began to stir. The calm waters shifted, rippling with increasing intensity. Mami Wata's presence grew stronger, the water swirling violently beneath him. The saxophone in his hands felt heavier, as though it too was trapped, weighed down by the force of the curse. Kazi could hear her voice now, soft at first, like a whisper carried on the wind, but growing clearer with each passing second. "You cannot escape me," Mami Wata's voice called from the depths. "You have made your choice. I own you, Kazi. You will play for me forever." The storm in the lake surged forward, the waves rising high, crashing against the shore. The force of the water was a reminder of the power Mami Wata held over him, her love, her jealousy, her demand for his soul. She had given him life, but in return, she had taken everything. Kazi's hands shook as they gripped his saxophone, his breath ragged as he struggled to find the next note. But no matter how hard he tried, the music felt hollow, the sound lost in the storm that raged inside him. He could no longer play for the world, nor could he play for himself. His music had become a curse. The lake responded, the waves rising higher as Mami Wata's anger intensified. She would not be ignored. And in the midst of the chaos, Kazi heard her call out to him again, this time more forcefully, more demanding. "Play for me, Kazi. Play for me, or I will take you back to the depths where you belong." Her voice echoed in his ears, drowning out everything else. The storm was not just in the water, it was inside him, in his very soul. The silence, the longing, the curse, everything pressed in on him. Kazi knew then that he was truly trapped. His past, his love, his voice, all were gone, consumed by the lake, consumed by Mami Wata's unrelenting desire. And so, he played. Each note was a plea for freedom, each melody a reflection of his struggle. But in the back of his mind, he knew there was no escape. The silent melody was not just the music, it was his fate. The sound of a man caught between life and death, between the world of the living and the spirits of the lake. It was another quiet evening by the lake, when the winds shifted, carrying with them a sound that Kazi had not heard in a long time. Laughter. Soft at first, like the distant chime of a bell, it seemed so out of place in the otherwise mournful atmosphere. He paused mid-note, the saxophone still at his lips, and turned toward the shore, his heart quickening. The moonlight bathed the water in an ethereal glow, and there, standing at the edge of the lake, was a woman. She was unlike anyone Kazi had ever seen. Her presence was warm, vibrant, as if the very air around her shimmered with life. She stood there, barefoot on the damp earth, her eyes drawn to the water, but her attention fixated on the haunting melody that had filled the night. Her name was Amina, and she was a woman of joy, full of light, full of love, a stark contrast to the shadow that had enveloped Kazi for so long. Kazi's fingers, which had only known sorrow, faltered for a moment as he gazed at her. Amina seemed like a vision from another life, a time when hope was still possible. She wore a simple dress of bright, earthy colors that fluttered in the night breeze, and her long hair, braided loosely, caught the moonlight, creating a halo around her head. Her smile, soft and genuine, melted the cool, somber atmosphere. Amina stepped closer to the water's edge, drawn in by the music that seemed to echo through her very soul. She tilted her head slightly, her gaze never leaving Kazi as he continued to play. "Your music," she said softly, her voice like the breeze itself. It feels like it's calling me. What is it that you are playing?" Kazi, caught in her warmth, felt an emotion rise within him that he hadn't felt in years. Hope. It was fleeting, fragile, like a bird afraid to take flight. He did not answer her directly, his saxophone the only means he had left to communicate. He played, his fingers moving along the keys, trying to convey the storm that had broken inside him. Amina listened, her eyes closing as the music washed over her. It was clear that she understood the depth of the melody, even if she couldn't fully grasp its meaning. She approached him slowly, as though testing the waters, each step deliberate, as though she were afraid to disturb the delicate moment. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice a mere whisper. "And why do you play in such sorrow?" Kazi's heart ached with the weight of her question. He wanted to answer her, to tell her the truth, to tell her who he had been before the curse had taken his voice and his life. But the words never came. Instead, he played harder, faster, the saxophone's sound growing more urgent, as if his heart were trying to spill out through the music. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, Kazi felt understood. Amina sat down by the water, her gaze fixed on him, her feet dipping into the cool lake. There was something about her, a peaceful resilience, that made him feel a sense of connection he had not known in so long. He continued to play, his music now a dialogue, a silent conversation between them. Over the course of several nights, Amina returned. She would sit by the shore, listening to Kazi's melodies, asking him questions about his music, but he would always remain silent. Despite her many attempts, the words would not come. The bond between them, however, deepened. She began to bring flowers, wild lilies and marigolds, placing them in the water as offerings, as though she was trying to connect with the lake and the spirit that held Kazi captive. On the fourth night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Amina spoke again. There was a softness to her voice, a tenderness that seemed to pierce the veil of the silence between them. "I think," she began slowly, "you are not just playing for yourself. You are playing for someone else, someone who's been waiting for a long time." Kazi stopped playing for a moment, the silence between them thick and heavy. Mami Wata's presence seemed to stir beneath the water, as if she sensed the intrusion. The calm of the night was suddenly replaced by the slightest ripple, a sign of her growing jealousy. Amina's words, though kind, had unwittingly touched the raw, painful truth of Kazi's existence. She did not know about Mami Wata, about the curse that bound him to the lake, nor the suffocating love of the water spirit that threatened to consume him entirely. But Kazi could feel the tension rise in the air, as though the waters themselves were waiting for his answer. He lifted the saxophone again, playing a slow, aching tune. Amina watched him intently, her eyes filled with understanding, and her heart open, not to the music alone, but to him, to the man beneath the curse. "Who is she?" Amina asked quietly, her voice barely audible over the sounds of the water. "The one you play for?" The words hung in the air, fragile and loaded with meaning. Kazi's fingers trembled on the saxophone, the melody faltering for a moment as the truth, long buried within him, threatened to spill out. The pain of years of silence, of the curse, of the haunting presence of Mami Wata, washed over him in waves. He had never spoken of her, not to anyone, not since the day she had taken his voice. But here, under the moonlight, with Amina's gaze so soft and understanding, he almost felt as though he could. But before he could answer, the water surged violently, a dark shadow rising from the depths. The wind howled, and the lake began to churn, warning Kazi that Mami Wata was near. Her anger had been ignited, and it was clear she would not tolerate this new connection. Amina gasped, looking out at the water, her eyes wide with fear, as the lake seemed to come alive. Kazi's heart raced. He knew what was coming, the storm that heralded Mami Wata's wrath. The saxophone fell silent, its music stilled by the rising tide. The two of them stood there, facing the lake, as the storm raged, and Kazi knew that the presence of Amina, the spark of hope she had brought into his life, would not go unnoticed. Mami Wata would not allow anyone to take what she had claimed. Amina's voice trembled as she reached out to Kazi. "What is happening? What is this?" Kazi could not answer. The storm was not just a storm, it was a warning. The storm raged on, its fury unmatched, as though the lake itself had become a living, breathing beast, thrashing violently under the command of a vengeful spirit. The once serene waters of Lake Victoria now churned in violent waves, rising high and crashing against the shore, as if they sought to drown everything in their path. The wind howled, whipping through the trees and bending the grass. The air was thick with tension, thick with the suffocating presence of Mami Wata. Kazi's heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing. Amina stood frozen beside him, eyes wide in terror as the water surged forward. Her feet sank into the damp earth, as though the very ground was trying to pull her into the depths. Kazi reached out instinctively, grabbing her hand, pulling her away from the water's edge. "We need to leave," Amina shouted, her voice almost lost in the roar of the storm. But Kazi didn't move. His eyes were fixed on the water, watching as the waves seemed to part, a dark figure rising from the depths, shimmering in the moonlight. Mami Wata. She appeared as though summoned by the very storm itself, a vision of beauty and terror, her silver eyes gleaming with a cold, knowing light. Her long, flowing hair was a cascade of dark tendrils, woven with water lilies and seaweed. Her body shimmered with scales that glistened like polished stone, and her presence commanded the lake, her energy rippling through the air. Amina gasped, stepping back in fear. "Who is that?" she asked, her voice trembling. Kazi did not answer. He could feel the weight of the curse around him, tightening its grip with every passing second. The storm was not just an act of nature, it was the fury of Mami Wata, angry at the intrusion of Amina into the sacred bond between them. The love that had once bound Kazi and the spirit of the lake had now been twisted into something more dangerous, an obsession that Mami Wata would not tolerate. "You brought her here," Mami Wata's voice rang out, soft but filled with an undeniable authority. It was a voice like the wind, like the waves crashing against the shore, both gentle and terrifying. "You dared to bring another into my domain, Kazi. She does not belong here." Amina stood frozen, caught between Kazi and the spectral figure of Mami Wata. She did not understand the full weight of the spirit's words, nor the ancient power that the water goddess wielded. All she saw was a woman who had the ability to control the very lake itself, and her heart filled with fear. "No," Kazi cried out, stepping forward, his voice the first words he had spoken in years. It was a hoarse sound, strained and raw, but it was a voice nonetheless. "Please, Mami Wata, don't take her." Mami Wata's silver eyes narrowed, her lips curling into a smile that was both haunting and cruel. "You begged for your life, and I gave it to you," she said, her voice laced with bitterness. "You have chosen me, Kazi. You have chosen silence, and now you will choose once more. Between me and her." Amina's eyes darted between Kazi and the spirit, her confusion turning into dread. "Kazi, what is she saying? What's happening?" Kazi felt his heart sink. He knew what was at stake now. The choice that Mami Wata was offering him was a cruel one. To sever the bond with her, to choose Amina over the goddess of the lake, would be to risk his very life. Mami Wata's power over him was absolute. To defy her would mean destruction, both for him and anyone he loved. The wind howled louder, whipping around them like a violent scream. The lake's waters rose higher, as if to engulf them both. Kazi's fingers twitched toward his saxophone, but he knew that it would not be enough. Music alone could not save him this time. Mami Wata's presence surrounded him, her form shifting like the water itself, fluid and ever-changing. "You have no choice, Kazi," she whispered, her voice softer now, seductive in its power. "I saved you. I gave you life, but I will take it back if you refuse me. I will take everything." Kazi's eyes filled with pain as he turned to Amina. She was no longer the radiant woman who had once brought him hope. Now, she was a symbol of everything he longed for, but could never have. She was a part of the world he could never return to. His music, his past, his voice, all of it had led him here, to this moment of impossible choices. Kazi began, his voice breaking. "I don't want to lose you, Amina." But Mami Wata's voice cut through his words like a blade. "Choose, Kazi," she said coldly. "Her life, or your freedom. I cannot give you both." Kazi felt his hands tremble as he looked at Amina. He could not bear the thought of her being taken by the lake, swallowed by the waters like so many others before her. He loved her. But could love ever truly be free when it was chained to a curse this powerful? In a final desperate move, Kazi stepped toward the lake's edge, his heart breaking with the weight of the decision. He could hear Mami Wata's voice in his mind, urging him to choose. But something in him refused to accept this fate. The saxophone was no longer just a tool of desperation. It was his final stand. He raised it to his lips once more, playing with all the emotion he could muster. The sound filled the air, a frantic, fevered melody that matched the storm's fury. Kazi played as if his very soul were spilling out with each note, as if his music could break the chains that bound him. But the moment he did, Mami Wata's power surged, and the waters responded violently, crashing forward with a deafening roar. "No!" Kazi shouted, his voice finally breaking free from the curse. "I choose love." Before he could react, Mami Wata's spirit struck. The lake's waters surged violently, pulling Kazi toward them with a force that could not be denied. The saxophone flew from his hands, splashing into the water as Mami Wata's icy grip locked around his heart. Amina screamed in horror as Kazi was yanked into the lake, the waters swallowing him whole. Desperation filled her as she dove in after him, her body plunging into the cold, dark abyss. But it was too late. The storm had passed, but the stillness that followed was more deafening than the chaos that had preceded it. The lake, now calm once more, lay under the light of the moon, its waters as smooth and glassy as the surface of a forgotten dream. There was no sign of Kazi, no sign of Amina, only the faint ripples where the two souls had been swallowed by the depths. Kazi and Amina, both lost to the lake's merciless embrace, now drifted in a world between worlds, neither alive nor dead, but trapped in the haunting space between the two. The air around them was thick with the silence that had followed the final desperate note of Kazi's saxophone. It was as if the lake itself had claimed them both, their souls now entwined with the waters they had loved and feared. In this liminal place, the voices of the living could not reach them. The world above had long since forgotten the sound of the saxophone's haunting melody, the music that had once spoken of Kazi's longing, his loss, and his love. The lake, in all its beauty and terror, had claimed the song, and with it, the man who had played it. But the music did not end. The sound of the saxophone lingered, echoing faintly through the stillness of the night, now twisted, warped by the waters. It was no longer a song of sorrow, but a song of eternal silence. The melody, once filled with life and longing, now carried a new weight, a weight of finality, of loss that could not be undone. Kazi and Amina floated together, suspended in the cold, dark waters, their forms barely visible beneath the surface. They were no longer themselves, no longer bound to the world of the living. They were spirits, adrift in the limbo of the lake, unable to escape the grasp of Mami Wata. Above the water, the moon shone brightly, casting its pale light over the stillness. The lake, in its quiet dominance, seemed at peace again. But beneath its surface, the spirits of Kazi and Amina lingered, silent, eternal, bound by the curse of love and jealousy that had claimed them both. Mami Wata watched from the depths, her silver eyes glowing in the moonlight. She was the keeper of this place, the ruler of the lake, and in her gaze, there was no mercy, only the cold understanding of the balance she had created. The souls of Kazi and Amina were hers now, as much a part of the lake as the water itself. Their love, their music, their sorrow, they had all become part of the eternal cycle of the lake's power. As the moon moved across the sky, the lake shifted, its surface rippling gently like a quiet breath. The wind whispered through the trees, and the world above moved on, unaware of the souls trapped beneath the water's surface. Kazi's saxophone, now lost to the depths, remained silent, its music no longer able to escape the lake's grasp. The myth of the Jazzman of Lake Victoria was not just a tale of love and loss. It was a story of the dangers of obsession, of the price one pays for a love that consumes. It was a reflection of the duality of water itself, beautiful and life-giving, yet capable of drowning, of swallowing whole all that came too close. It spoke of the struggle between the living and the dead, the earthly and the ethereal, and the destructive power of longing that once unleashed could never be controlled. Kazi and Amina's tragic fate was a reminder of the delicate balance between love and possession. Mami Wata, in her jealousy and desire, had destroyed that balance, claiming both their souls as a testament to her power. She was the spirit of the water, nurturing yet unforgiving, beautiful yet deadly. She had shown them the cost of unrequited love, of the dangers of falling prey to desire without understanding its true power. As the lake lay still once more, its surface reflecting the light of the stars above, Kazi and Amina's story became a part of the myth itself. Their love, their music, their sorrow, all of it now existed in the water, the wind, and the night, never to be forgotten, but never to be truly heard again. And so, the lake remained, as timeless and eternal as the myth itself. If this tale of love, jealousy, and the supernatural captivated you, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with others who might enjoy these powerful stories from African mythology. Your support helps us bring more legends like this to life. What do you think of Kazi's tragic choice? Which myth would you like to see explored next? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your ideas, and if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the rich, mysterious world of African myths.